Hey everyone, so let's talk about users and let's talk about your relationship with said users. So, to start off this talk, I'm going to mention something that happened at work a little while ago. So, at my services where I work currently, we had this issue. Basically, one of the main things that we have released in recent time is a bank integration with Swedbank here in Sweden, which is, for those of you who are not from Sweden, one of the country's biggest banks, which is, pretty cool for us, the people working there, and it's a big step for the company, which is great. I haven't been working there for all that long, but it's really fun to see, basically getting to be part of something where, you're just at that magic moment where things go from, okay, this is pretty cool, we've proven that it works, and now it's, kind of on the rise of things. And we have a lot of really interesting conversations with different, basically people and banks and so forth who are interested in the service. So what's kind of the topic of discussion right now, or in our little talk here, is that just a little while ago we had this issue where, because we are integrating towards the banking system, and as you may or may not know, the banking system is a very conservative organization. In other words, it takes them a lot. Usually they're very slow, like very, very slow. They're this stable organization that a lot of people depend on, and therefore, they can't move as fast as you would, maybe want. And apart from that, we actually have a situation where, like, a lot of the integrations that we do towards their APIs, and where we depend on the banking system's computer systems in order to be able to provide the value that our service provides. And what's been the topic of discussion is that a lot of the time when somebody comes to our application and they want to basically get the value from the application that we are providing, because we depend on the banking system, we are always at their mercy. If their system goes down, so does ours. And so one of the people I work with, he's a genius when it comes to, well, basically his full-time job is growth. And what I mean by that is basically his entire job is to figure out what the users will want next, or what we can do in order to attain more users and more people interested in the product, right? That's his entire deal. He does a lot of experiments and A/B testing and all that good stuff that you would presume somebody who is into growth would be doing, right? And so he put on the top. He basically put forward a suggestion where, when one of our banking colleagues or partners, if their system goes down, maybe we could communicate that to the users. Like, we could say that, oh yeah, basically he was saying something very along the lines that we should, have an error message saying that, oh, sorry, it's not our systems are working fine, but the problem is with this bank that we're trying to access for for you, and like to get the information we need in order to provide the value that you're looking for, right? And I kind of stopped him there. Like, I just overheard him when I was working on another feature, and I went over to his desk and I was talking to him and the other teams, and I said, well, that to me seems a little bit weird, almost a little bit immature, actually. And he asked me, well, what do you mean by immature? Well, if you think about it, the users are coming to our application to attain the value that our application is supposed to provide to them. As a user, you don't care whose fault it is if something's not working. I mean, ask yourself, if you go to YouTube and, YouTube doesn't work for some reason, do you really care? Like, most people don't even make the distinction between YouTube and, like, one of their, like, partners or integrations and so forth. All you care about is that, hey, you went to youtube.com and something's not working. In your mind, it's all YouTube's fault, or like Google in this situation. I said, the same thing goes for us. Why would we point our finger basically like a child at another organization and say, hey, that organization is the problem? It's not our fault. We are perfectly fine. It's just that we can't access their system. They're down. And I said, that's a little bit, to me at least, immature. At least I feel so. It's a little bit immature. Yes, it is unfair that, if their system goes down, then we are also down, and therefore we can, our users are unhappy, basically. But I think that, considering that we have a very intimate relationship with the banking systems, and that basically, I mean, there are partners in all of this, and if they go down, like, would you like to be that type of person, like, where you basically blame somebody else for the mistakes? I personally, and I said to him, I think it's a much more, you know, classy approach to simply try to do our best to mitigate some of the frustration that our users are going to feel from this little snafu in our system, or this temporary downtime. And we could promote we could add a very nice graphic and an error message, or anything, something like that. We could take responsibility for the downtime, because the user doesn't care what went wrong. The user just cares that we can provide the value that we are promising the user. And it's our responsibility as an organization to make sure that it works, because that's the promise that we are giving our users, that we can deliver this. And to me it's very much the same, that as a programmer, I know when something goes wrong in the code, and sure, I can sit down with my users and tell them, oh, it went wrong because programming is very, very complicated. But the user doesn't care, or very rarely the user doesn't care about, like, why something broke. That's my job. My job is to make sure it doesn't break, regardless of the reason. And it's actually one of the reasons why I'm a strong advocate of never building something that you can't control. A very good example is something that has plagued me so many times before, and that is basically where designers and, like, product owners and so forth ask me to build something that, especially for web applications, now this happened to Ticketmaster so many times, where they don't understand the platform, and they ask me to build something that the browser is not really made to do. One example is, if you've ever tried to make a modal window, like a modal pop-up or something like that, you know that the most common way of solving that problem to make sure is that you simply put a position fixed overlay with the information, and then you're done. Problem is that 99% of the time somebody's going to tell you that, hey, I can still scroll the background when I see the modal. And the reason why that is because the browser by default is scrolling the entire document, and the modal is just, something on top of the document. So what you will have to do is that you will have to do overflow hidden on the body element, on the body tag, in order to stop that scrolling. Now, the problem, and usually that works, but there may or may not be an issue, because certain browsers have, like Internet Explorer or Edge or so forth, have this, very visual scroll bar on the right side of the window. Now, what happens if you have a content that is bigger than the viewport and you put overflow hidden on the body? Well, the browser is going to basically remove the sidebar. The scroll bar is going to go away, which will make the whole screen jump. And a lot of designers, like every single one I've talked to, has told me, oh, this is really bad, that we should do something about that. And I actually had an incident where me personally, I will tell them that, hey, I'm sorry, this is the way that the web works. This is the way that the browser will behave. And I will not try to hack, because for the most part, you will have to hack something together, or use a library that may wrap a hack in place in order to solve this problem. My colleague at Ticketmaster did this exact thing. He introduced a library that solved this problem in a very hacky way. It basically knew the dimensions of the sidebar and accounted for it in order to basically allow you to do this. And the thing is that when we did that, it actually introduced a whole series of other problems. I'm not saying that you can't do it in a nice way, but the morale of the story is that you should not there were even more issues by hacking it together. You should accept the limitations of the platform, and it goes for the same for what I was talking to my colleague. So I was saying to him that we are limited in our ability. Like basically we are at the mercy of these banks, and we will always, as a business, be at that in that position, because our service, or like the value that we are providing to our users, is basically a massive integration platform where multiple different basically we collect a lot of value from different services into one service. That means that we are in the position that we are always at the mercy of these data producers that we consume in order to provide our value. So rather than pointing fingers and putting ourselves in a very difficult political situation, because imagine if you are one of the banking systems and there's this other organization that's basically pointing at you and saying, hey, they have really crafty systems, it's not our fault, it's their fault. How likely are you to want to maintain a healthy relation or a good-hearted relationship with such an organization? Wouldn't think so. I wouldn't. If I was that organization, I wouldn't want to be involved with something like that. So if we accept that, even though it's not technically our fault, if we just, man up or woman up or cowboy up, if you want to call it that, and take responsibility and basically try to take the angle, let's solve this in the least painful way for the user, and even though take that frustration and learn from that frustration so that we can provide a nicer user experience. And having that approach, I think, is much more long-term beneficial for the company than anything else, because we come back to the fundamental thing this little rant of mine is about, and that is that the user doesn't care. Most users are not technical people. They are coming to us to get the value that we can provide, and if we can't provide that value, then they're just going to go somewhere else, or they're going to ignore us. Giving them the technical reasons why we can't do something may mitigate a little bit of it, but for the most part, people will just go on with their day. So that's my 2 cents on the matter. If you are building a system, either if something is really difficult, apologize if it fails, or make sure that that you're building something that you can control. That's basically it.